My name is Ndamukong Suh. I played in the NFL for 13 years with 5 different teams. I was known as one of the toughest, hardest hitting players in the game. This is everything I'm authorized to tell you. You're playing a sport in the NFL that is 100% guaranteed you are going to be injured. I've had total reconstruction of my right shoulder and ACL reconstruction on my right knee. I was fortunate enough to not miss any games due to injury. I played through them because it's a pride thing, but it's also, I don't like missing games. I'm not a person that feels sorry for myself. My reputation as an NFL player was, in my opinion, hard-nosed, aggressive, and misunderstood. I say the latter of misunderstood because I don't think people gave me an unbiased view. And it wasn't until later on in my career where I really understood in the NFL, there's a pretty boy in the league, probably say Tom. There's a golden boy in the league, which you'd probably say Peyton Manning. Then there's like the angel of the league, you'd probably say Tim Tebow. And then there's the villain. And I was the villain. Just from a marketing perspective, learned a lot in being able to embrace that. I don't know what guy that's out there that has been considered an elite defensive lineman that is considered a nice guy. Aaron Donald's not the nice guy. Myles Garrett's not the nice guy. Micah Parsons ain't no nice guy. There's no defensive guy that's a nice guy. I mean, even Luke Kuechly, like he's probably one of the most praised linebackers. He wasn't no nice guy. Like I remember I hit Jay Cutler when he was playing for Chicago, and before we became teammates in Miami, I hit him in his back as hard as I could. And it looked awful. But they said I hit him in his neck and head and area, which is illegal. But if you go back and slow down the tape, I hit him right on his nameplate. It was a legal play, but because it was me, and it was because of past history, I got fined for that and I got in trouble for that. I think from an amount perspective, I was probably, throughout the years, probably in the $500,000 type range. Did I care for them? No. Were some of them egregious without question? Was there times where I was upset and felt unfair and unjust? 1,000%. But great players and great people are held to different standards. Media played a massive part into my reputation, and I think that was why I took as much as possible a big hiatus from them. There were some things that I did that were seen as very aggressive, and that I think ultimately some of the mistakes that I've had in my career that have kept that and painted that picture, but that's not who I was, and you don't see that every single time, but it just stuck with me, and it is what it is. People enjoyed being teammates with me and always wish that I played with them or was happy that I was on their team. And I mean, even fans, I ran into a fan the other day. I was like, man, why won't you come play for us? It's like, we would have loved for you to be on our team. We hated playing against you. I think I was doing my job being hated on the defense side of the ball by the other teams. And I think it's more of a sign of respect versus being something other than that. I am not who I am on the football field as compared to off the football field. I am very much so mild-mannered, introvert, keep to myself and family and friends. And not saying I'm two different people, because I have a very competitive edge. We go play pool right now. I'll try and take your head off on pool and embarrass you from that standpoint. But ultimately, when you get between those white lines, I don't have any friends unless we're wearing the same color jersey. Football as a sport is a very violent sport and physically demanding sport. There's 11 guys on each side of the ball, and then the combination of those 11 guys as well as a full roster of the game time roster is 46 guys that are active and able to play in the game. And so they come together, and again, 11 on each side, starting 22. I think the best way I would explain the game of football, it's a game of many different chess moves. There's a lot of different nuances from offensive side of the ball to the defensive side of the ball to special teams, and they all have to fundamentally work together in some form or fashion to win the game. My position in the NFL was defensive tackle, but I primarily played every single position on defensive line, which was, in the simplest way, I was the guy hitting the quarterback and hitting the running back and trying to destroy your offense on the front line. My peak performance weight in my prime, I would say I've never changed height. I was 6'4". I was about 305 to 306 pounds. The guys that I would go against, which on average was at minimum 2 offensive linemen, were weighing anywhere between 315 pounds to 350 pounds. And most of those guys are typically anywhere between 6'4" and 6'6" to 6'8". If I were to put my power into numbers in the weight room, I'd probably best say my peak was benching 525 pounds on a max rep. Squatting probably in that 600-700 range on a 1 rep max. I wasn't getting hit most of the time. I was delivering most of the hits. But I mean, there are bone-chilling hits where guys have been paralyzed. There are hits where, again, if an everyday person was hit like that, they probably would not get up. And a guy just bounces up and it's like, let's go. Let's go have some more fun. And so to me, it's a special game, but it's a special game for the right person, the right mentality, and the right person that can endure that and really enjoys being able to be gifted to have that craft. I was in the NFL for 13 years. My first 5 years were with the Detroit Lions. My next 3 years were in Miami with the Dolphins. And then I played 1 year with LA Rams. And then 3 more years in Tampa Bay, Florida with the Buccaneers. And then my last year was with the Philadelphia Eagles. I've had 6 different contracts. And that first contract, didn't really understand like how it all worked. Players typically are not privy because most front offices don't like to talk directly to players. And I learned that the hard way later on in my career once I was representing myself in some of my deals. I didn't understand why they were taking so long to sign my deal and really just kind of quote unquote put the offer on the table. I was drafted 2nd overall. Lo and behold, I found out I was supposed to make more money than Matthew Stafford. The ownership was like, we can't see you making more money than our star quarterback. And I was like, I don't make the rules. This is just what it's been. And I was like, okay, that's good for him. Like, I'm a defensive lineman. Like, I'm the first round pick for you guys. And he went 1, I went 2. There's not much of a difference. I should have went 1. And I said, all right, I will accept that I will not make more than your star quarterback. Just remember, in 5 years from now, when we come back to negotiate, I'm going to not take a hometown discount. I signed my deal. It's guaranteed $60 million with the potential to earn up to $64 million at the end of my 5 years. Really, the only thing they could negotiate was signing bonus. So that's when you look at the overall contract number, and a lot of people say, oh, 2 years for $100 million. But the real key number is how much of that guarantee was given to you of that $100 million. Was it $5 million or was it $100 million guaranteed? The average NFL career, which is why this guaranteed money is very, very important, is 2.8 years. And I think it's maybe gotten a little bit longer, maybe got rounded up to 3, but it's very interesting. And the key caveat is you're not a vested veteran until 3.5 years, aka your 4th season. Guaranteed money is very, very important. That guarantee means that for the most part, you're going to get those dollars regardless of you being injured or stepping foot on the football field or not stepping foot on the football field. If you have a career-ending injury and you don't have any guarantee, that team owes you nothing, not 1 red cent. I've fortunately never had to experience that. I was typically in a position of somebody wanting me, or team organization wanting me, to where I had guaranteed money. CBA is a collective bargaining agreement between the NFL and the NFL Players Association, which is our union. And so there's so many different things that are negotiated, from pensions to rules and regulations for in-game and all the different particular pieces that go on. Probably the simplest way for people to understand it is like there's a big pot of money that is made up of the NFL. How is it equally split, for lack of better words, between NFL and the PA, which is a players association? I mean, I think the safe way to say it is the percentage of true dollars. So if it's a easy math $100 million deal, you're going to probably take home, after agent fees, taxes, all the above, probably about $50 million. It was surreal. It was one of those things that I definitely opened up my online account at Wells Fargo multiple times, and like, it's actually really there. Like you used to seeing like $200-300, maybe if I'm really lucky $1,000 in college. But yeah, to see multiple zeros in 7 digits was rewarding. A contract covers mandatory minicamp, which is usually in the beginning or middle of June. Then camp starts at the end of July. Like most guys will start third or fourth week of July, if not the last couple of days of July, and that'll go all the way through to your last game of the season. And if you're lucky enough and good enough, you'll make it into the playoffs. Super Bowl now is moved back to the second weekend of February. Dallas Cowboys was my probably true welcome to the NFL moment. I was a rookie, bright lights in Dallas, Texas, in the big old Jerry's World Stadium. The crowds were smaller in the NFL to me. I'm used to University of Nebraska game day at home. We've got 90+ thousand screaming fans cheering, where a lot of stadiums in the NFL I think are typically anywhere between 65,000 to 75, 85,000. I'd experienced Jerry's World, so it wasn't that eye-opening, but it was still the NFL. Leonard Davis was probably 6'8", 380. Doug Free was probably another 6'7", 6'8", and probably 350. These guys knew I was a rookie. I was a first-round draft pick. That was them salivating at the mouth. Like, we're veterans. We're going to teach you. Welcome to the league, and you got some stuff to learn, young pup. My coach earlier on that week was like, I won't look down upon you as a player if you get a double team by both these guys and you're taught to kind of take a knee and drop your hip to dissipate the full weight. And the first time I didn't do that. And I was fighting for my life, and it was a good lesson. I still didn't drop to a knee, but I found some different creative ways to make sure I kept them on 2 different levels. The psychology of the game was huge for me as an individual. I, 1, worked with a sports psychologist. 2, I did meditation prior to the games, whether it was in the locker room and on the field, visualizing the different things that I was going to have great successes in. Practice day for an everyday NFL player is tons of meetings, usually in the gym or in the facility no later than 7:30, 8 o'clock. Meetings, practices, rehab, prehab, workout, and obviously practice and whatnot, and then more meetings, and then you're out of the office usually 4 or 5 o'clock. Game day, let's just say 1 p.m. game, you're probably up no later than 8, 9 o'clock at the facility or at the stadium no later than 90 minutes before the game, where you're not playing. But most guys are smart and are getting there between 2.5 and 3 hours before the game, get prepared, and then play the game, have some fun, win it. I started my rehab right after the game before I went and saw family, but most guys just shower, change, and go home. Home games, I would get on a bike for 30 minutes, had a bike ride, trying to get the lactic acid out of my legs, and then I got into the cold tub, typically depending on, again, 1 o'clock game. Get home, eat dinner with the family or whoever's in town, then do some more treatment through the rest of the night, just depending on what little boo-boo I was dealing with. Away games, as soon as we flew home, because every single team I played for, we left right after the game. Got home, no matter where, East Coast, West Coast, or a 30-minute flight, like if I was in Tampa coming from New Orleans or Atlanta, I'd land, go right to the gym, get that 30, 45 minute bike ride on, get in the cold tub, and then go home and sleep majority of the next day. I think what gives people confidence, and especially for somebody like me, is seeing a consistent routine that you're able to live and abide by. And when you have that base layer and that solid foundation in your preparation, it allows you to twist and turn with the curveballs that are thrown at you. I always wanted to be an engineer. My dad was a mechanical engineer. As a young kid, I was always loved working with my hands and building stuff and tearing stuff down. The construction industry within school was seen as a very difficult major. It wasn't until I got into the thick of it, I was like, okay, I can see why they see this as like most athletes, football players aren't going through engineering school and whatnot. But I loved it, and I take great pride in that degree, and it's something that nobody can ever take away from me. My freshman year, I got into Nebraska, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed guy running around. There's two guys that were projected to be a first round and a second or third round pick in the NFL draft. I was forced to work out with them every single day. Okay, no problem. I remember our strength coach was like, man, this kid is special. And he was like, he started to kind of wrap his arm around me a little bit more. Fast forward 2-3 years later, the 2008 crash happens in the finances in the world. So the world's upside down. My dad owns his own company. Obviously, I could usually call home and ask for $100, and yeah, I'll send it to you, no problem. It wasn't that simple anymore. I made a determination that off season, I'm just gonna do whatever I can to make it pro. I hate to see my dad struggling from that standpoint, and I want to change the trajectory of our family from a generational perspective, and I can see the NFL as an opportunity. My mom, who is the best, is like, that's great and all. Like, I still don't understand football. Like, it was amazing that you got a free scholarship to go to school. You're getting your degree, all these different things, and you're going to come home and help your dad's business grow and take it to another level. And I'm like, Mom, you realize like I can go play this game longer and make tons and tons of money. She was like, okay, that's cool. But you're going to finish your degree. So it sounds like to me that you're not going to leave, and you're going to finish your degree, and then you can go off and do whatever you want to do from that standpoint. So I was like, okay, understood. So the decision was I stayed in school, another great year, and then I won every defensive award but one. I was drafted in 2010. The NFL draft is a special moment in a lot of guys' life. It's the start to hopefully an amazing career, but to be drafted in the first day, let alone in the first round, is life-changing, not only from a money perspective, but also from an awareness perspective. The weight on your shoulders of being a top pick, you're supposed to be one of those guys that are going to come into a team and help them get to the promised land, which is to win a Super Bowl. You're typically going to the worst team, especially if you're a top 5, top 10 pick. There's 32 teams. Usually the 32nd team has won the Super Bowl, so that's where they get their first pick in the first round. So the worst team with the worst record gets the number 1 pick for that upcoming draft. Roger Goodell says Ndamukong Suh is selected by the Detroit Lions. And I was kind of upset, and also thankful at the same time of saying, hey, I was second overall pick, but this was not what I expected. And a friend of mine, Amobi Okoye, who was basically a big brother to mine, but we're same age. He'd been in the league, played for the Texans a couple years prior to me. He's like, man, he asked me, like, why are you upset? I'm supposed to be in Tampa, all these different things transpired, and this wasn't the case. And I wasn't expecting to go to Detroit. And like, Detroit is a city that's down in the dumps. Like, I can't imagine myself being down there. Like, Sunshine, Florida. I'm coming from the Pacific Northwest in Portland, Oregon, and been in Nebraska, middle of the country. He was like, man, just be thankful, like, your second overall pick and move forward. And I was like, I am, but it's like, this team is awful. And he was like, all right, this is a great opportunity for you to take this team to the next level. I took that with me, and I went to Detroit, and it was one of the best things for me to go to that city and play for that city. I got to kind of create my own quote unquote legacy of playing blue collar football in a blue collar city. I'm wired differently. And this is something why I tell my people all the time, my kids will not play football. They don't have the concept or understanding of what it's like to play hurt. There's a difference between being injured and being hurt. And from playing the game of football, which I love, I've had total reconstruction of my right shoulder, 13 anchors, and both labral front and back repaired. ACL reconstruction on my right knee with at least 2 scopes post that reconstruction. I've had 3, maybe 4 scopes on my left knee, and look at my hands. I was fortunate enough to not miss any games due to injury. I played through them because it's a pride thing, but it's also, I don't like missing games, and I'm not a person that feels sorry for myself. So if I physically couldn't go, that's one thing. But if I did everything possible and I wasn't able to go, I get it. Playing hurt for a pro athlete versus playing hurt for an average person, that's an interesting question. I don't even know how I would answer that, because I don't think the average person understands what playing hurt is actually all about. It depends on the team that you're playing for, because I think there's great teams. I'll just be very transparent. Detroit was very average at supporting their players in these things to keep them highly recovered and prepared to go for every single game. Especially, maybe it wasn't a focus early on in the 2010s when I was there, to where when I got to Miami in 2015, they definitely went above and beyond. And Stephen Ross and his organization were all about whatever the players need to be successful, I will provide that for them. And there's other teams where they've had some great elite folks that worked within the organization. I'll say Tampa Bay was one of those, but they didn't also have all of the best tools and resources. So it's like a combination of, you got stuff on your own and stuff that that the team can provide. I still work out every single day. I think it's one of the things that keep me fresh for the most part. But yeah, there's plenty of things I still deal with. Like I said, my hands and wrists and knees and all this stuff, still stuff to deal with. As a professional athlete, entertainer, or a person of notoriety and is recognizable in a community or across the world, be who you are, but also make sure you're guarded and trust the people that are with and around you. Like, you can tell pretty easily when somebody recognizes you or something of that nature. There's definitely been times where I've come across a fan where I would like to say they have little man syndrome. It's not physically being a little man, but the concept of them feeling like they want to show their toughness. You just got to be the bigger person and walk away and not engage, for lack of a better word. People are excited to see you, but also need to respect your time and space. My no person now is my wife, even though I'm more than capable of telling people no, but there's certain situations when it's better for her to say no versus me saying no. Being out to dinner with our kids and in a public setting, and she sees somebody approaching, she'll be like, hey, unfortunately with the family right now, he'll consider giving you a picture or whatever it may be once we're done. But I never understood why people wanted to touch me. And it's a big irritant even to this day. And I was actually with my uncle yesterday, and he was like, you have to somewhat desensitize yourself to this. They want to touch you and talk to you because they want to make sure that you're real, because they're looking at you from a screen or seeing you from the stands, and they can't believe that's you in front of them. To this day, I still cringe a little bit when people touch me and I don't know them. I have a little better of understanding about it. You notice guys that have an understanding of money and guys who don't have an understanding of money and how they kind of treat it. You have the maturity aspect, you have the athletic God-given athletic abilities, but then also you have this coddling and this enabling. And also there's a nature of saying, hey, I only want you to have this tunnel vision on being successful in this sport and only and focusing on that versus having a breadth of knowledge and then being exposed to other things. People like to stay up with the Joneses and have nice cars and have nice jewelry and bags and stuff like that. I just wasn't wired like that. So I also saved my money, and my parents were very on top of me, to say the least. My first actual paycheck was, I want to say $3.6 million. And I signed my deal. I got a signing bonus. In our tradition in our family in Cameroon history, you give your dad your first real paycheck. So I gave it to my dad, and then he obviously gave it right back to me, and I deposited it. Young athletes coming out and they say, hey, I want to buy my mom a house. I'm going to get her 6,000 square foot house, 3-car garage. Can your mom maintain that? Or does that have to sit on you to maintain that? And that's where you enable and potentially hurt people with finances and things of that nature. You have to be careful how you support others with that money, because you can enable people and put them in a downward spiral of a negative consequence of them and their finances. And you may not understand what you're doing because you think you're helping somebody. I've always had a close-knit group, and I have an amazing family. Especially my immediate family, my mom, my sister, my father. They didn't ask for anything from me. My money was my money. If I wanted to support them, I supported them. I did have to learn to say no, but I have an amazing older sister who was my no person, and she did 99% of it for me, just so I was able to focus and not deal with drama and things of that nature. And she took the bad rap, which was a great thing, but as you got older and more mature, being able to say no to people became easier and easier. And I think that's something that comes with growth. And I was fortunate enough, I had great mentors as well. Joe Mowgli is one of those guys, which is a former chairman of TD Ameritrade, that showed me his budget before I even left college. And I learned very quickly how to manage money, or manage a large sum of money, because of his experience and his lessons. When I sat down with Joe, he was like, I mean, you could be spending $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month. And I was like, absolutely not. There's no way. Expenses to maintain to be an NFL player can be exorbitant. There's so many different things, whether it's from hyperbaric chamber, $20,000. I've got 2 of those. Hyper ice equipment, cold tubs. Like there's a gamut of things. Physical therapist, naturopath coming to see me every single week. Depending on who you are and how detail oriented you want to be with your recovery and your performance, and making sure you're prepared to not miss any games. Easily spending a year $500,000 to $1 million plus. I feel like some people, especially being sports figures, athletes, entertainers, they feel like they can't understand it and they should just hand it off to somebody else. I think it's a little bit of laziness, but also entitlement that they should just be taken care of. Warren Buffett. I seeked him out right as I was leaving college. It was a challenge from a friend, actually. You should ask Warren to be your mentor. And I was like, there's no way he will do it. I had met him my senior year in college. He was an honorary captain. So I went up to Coach Osborne, who was our AD at the time, and said, hey, would you connect us? I'd love to meet with him, see if he would have a conversation with me. And then Coach Osborne said, yeah, I'd be happy to. I can't promise you he'll meet with you or not. I got to the meeting like 2 or 3 hours ahead of time because I was not going to be late. So I just sat there, and Miss Debbie, who's his assistant, was like, you know, you got here way too early. And I was like, yeah, I didn't want to be late. There was no risk of being late and whatnot. I think we talked for like 2 or 3 hours, and he said, I'd be happy to mentor you. You're going to probably be bored because I do a lot of reading. I would always, in the off season, go spend time with him, get on the phone with him. He's just one of those people that are very easy to talk to, try and catch up on a quarterly basis, and was able to see his retirement live. The most surprising lesson was him very adamantly about being patient. Um, Great things come to you with patience, and if you can learn to have patience and stick to quality people and identifying that, like that those two things will serve you right. When it comes to finances, I've had plenty of mistakes. I am not afraid to admit that. I've made some terrible investments because I wasn't patient. I was looking for immediate success. I've had lessons because it was before its time. I think probably if you look at LeBron's uninterrupted concept and creating that, I had something very, very similar that I invested a good amount of money into, but it was the timing wasn't right, the infrastructure wasn't right, and the people weren't right. And so it failed, but it was directly the same exact concept. Endorsements are huge, and I've had deals with Verizon, Sprint, all the above. It was considered illegal to do that when I was playing football at Nebraska. It's pretty asinine, to say the least, that the university and everybody except for the person that is being leveraged can make money off of their name, image, and likeness and off their back. People are buying that jersey number because they want to support that person that's wearing that jersey number. There is a massive difference between when I was in college playing college football and what college football athletes get this day and age. So there's this thing called name, image, and likeness. They call it short for NIL. And athletes are now able to get paid for their name, image, and likeness while they're playing at their universities. When I left college and I did that autograph circuit and some stuff in between Lincoln and Omaha from speaking engagements and autographs, probably made, let's say, $250,000. To whereas the average D lineman or defensive player that's a star is probably making $500,000 to $750,000 to $1 million right now for their NIL deals. Nike, I was fortunate enough to be signed immediately out of college before I even signed my NFL deal and was even drafted. It's confidential, as all those deals are, but I definitely had a good six-figure deal with them, and I got a very large allotment of product that I get for friends and family. I had a great situation at Nike headquarters, where I'm originally from, in Portland, Oregon. Full access to multiple gyms and fields and turf and grass, all the above. And then I had a great trainer and performance director that I worked with. It was something that Nike wasn't really originally open to. Like, usually athletes come on campus for 2-3 days consecutively and then they go off to wherever they're going. But I was there 2, 3, 4 months consecutively, and so like the access and all these different things, it wasn't a common practice or a common request from that standpoint. It was a little clunky at first, but after the first year or two, it was smooth sailing. Oh, Sue's just here. I'm still a Nike Inc. athlete. I'm on the Jordan side, and it is one of those things that I very much so cherish, the relationships. I've had, fortunately, a very, very successful individual career playing football, but also in a team-oriented perspective as well, having won 3 NFC championships and a Super Bowl. Team loyalty to a player, I mean, I think there's no loyalty in business at the end of the day. And it's unfortunate, especially in the sports world. For me, like, there can be loyalty if there wants to be on both sides. Leaving Detroit was, I mean, probably one of the most difficult decisions I ever had to make in my life. At the end of the day, what gave me comfort, I was doing what was best for me and my family. Detroit was given the opportunity to match the deal that Miami gave me. And I also left money on the table. The Oakland Raiders offered me more money than Miami did. And so I left money on the table. I gave the team that I wanted to stay with the opportunity to match, and they chose not to match it. Having multiple short-term contracts, especially later on in my career, it's as simple as this: betting on myself. All right, cool. Just give me a 1-year deal at my number, and we'll go from there. You knew what you could expect every single year from me, whether I was hurt or not hurt, playing on a torn PCL, playing with a hurt shoulder, with my shoulder coming in and out of my socket. So, like, there were things that teams knew. He's durable. He's going to show up. He's going to play at a high level. There was a time I signed a contract. They didn't want to meet me at my number. It's not very public, but I'll share it with you. And I said, okay, no problem. But give me every incentive to do it. And they were like, you'll just hit those incentives and it's not going to be team oriented. I said, all right, no problem. I'm going to bet on myself, but I will bet on myself that me being a part of this team will be the success of us reaching a Super Bowl. I took a little bit of a pay cut. It was a down year because of COVID, so our revenues and all these different things were down. It was just a $2 million difference. And I don't just say only because it's a lot of money, but it was, they were projecting, and this for the budgets, and then also the understanding, like, hey, man, like, COVID and all these different things, constricted budgets, and I understood it to some extent, but also, like, I felt like I knew what my worth was. But I tied it to every team incentive. So win wild card, win divisional, win NFC championship, and then after those three, I basically reached all my bonuses to reach the number that I ultimately wanted to leave the season with. Did it, and also won a Super Bowl. That was with Tampa. So that was one of the years that I negotiated my own deal with the GM at the time. There were so many other things outside of the game of football that I did to support the game of football and create certain cultures, whether it's from defensive line perspective, defensive side of the ball, and mentoring guys. Granted, are there times when I was in Miami, didn't make the best decision, didn't make the best way of communicating and delivering it to my teammates? Oh, without question. The biggest fan base that left the biggest impression on me was it's going to be a tie between Detroit and Philly. Detroit, man, just loyal, good-hearted people. Like, I walk in that city and town, and like I always want to represent for them. They're just really, really good people, and it was a city that truthfully embraced me and helped me through my youth years. And then Philly, I mean, granted, they're definitely hard-nosed, and all they want to do is win, but they treated my family, and especially having my two young boys at the time, their first experience like gold. Although it was only 6 months in Philly, it was a special 6 months, and I wish we could have capped it off with a Super Bowl because that city was beautiful, and I love going back there all the time. Like, I mean, I still get people, again, the other day, like, go Birds. It was sickening to lose that game because I had such a perfect plan to ride off into the sunset with my last game ever being played, which still was my last game ever being played in the Super Bowl. I'll try not to be emotional, but the main reason why I ended up retiring was because of my dad. My dad was dying of cancer, and so I stepped away from the game. I wasn't ready, but I needed to. I mean, I won't say I wasn't ready. I accomplished a lot from a perspective of individual and team, especially winning a Super Bowl, and I was happy my father and parents and sister and everybody was be able to experience that. But I didn't really understand because I thought my dad was in remission, and it wasn't until a late night in Philly during that season, I got some terrible news. It was just a tough conversation. There was a couple of doctors I was super close with that took a look at my dad's most recent scans of what he was dealing with, and he's like, your dad is unfortunately in terminal. And I compartmentalized it, understood it, but I think that's one thing that's interesting about sports. It allows you to not forget about things, but put things to the side. That's why I was going to make the decision, obviously, after hopefully winning the Super Bowl, which we were on our way to doing, especially after demolishing the San Francisco 49ers NFC Championship, to then retire and then be able to just be like nothing but focused on that. And so that's really where my head went to. It wasn't a sulking. It wasn't a feeling bad for myself or feeling bad for my dad or anything of that nature or feeling bad for the family. It was like, how do we prolong your life outside of the expectation? Because that terminal conversation was, he's maybe got 6 months to a year at most. And that was in December of 22. And my dad didn't pass until summer of 24. I didn't go back, even though I knew I had plenty of left in the tank, for lack of better words, to keep playing if I wanted to. I officially retired, would have been summer of 2025, but my last down was Super Bowl in 23 with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think my legacy will determine itself in due time. I mean, I could still play today if I wanted to and get prepared if I really wanted to from that standpoint, but I knew I needed to go spend time and cherish as much as I can in time with my dad. Monetary, I didn't need money, didn't need anything from that perspective. Family's always first at the end of the day in my book, and I think it's important that you need to do what's best for you, but I also understand like the reason why some people need work or need something to take themselves away from the heartache and the tough times. My big focus right now is of being able to provide knowledge on financial literacy, but more importantly, being able to learn how to implement it into your life as an individual. So my foundation has evolved and changed over the years. We've gone from health and wellness, which has always been a factor, eating good quality food, things of that nature, fitness, moving, education, has always been something that's been important. My mom being a school teacher. No Free Lunch is my podcast that I started a year ago, actually, this past July. It's centered around the ethos of teaching people, again, financial literacy, financial empowerment, the successes and failures of reaching your goals and how you're going to get there, and telling these different stories and having these unfiltered conversations and being able to make it a common conversation versus it being a hard conversation or a difficult conversation, which is in a lot of different communities are very difficult conversations to be had, is super important to me.
Hi, I'm a producer on Authorized account. If you like this video, please subscribe and comment below with more topics that you would like us to cover.